All right, we got our newest member, Chris. Welcome, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Me and Chris have been going back and forth the past couple days, and every member that joins us, we like to give them a little podcast, YouTube episode. So whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, welcome, Chris. How does it feel?
Being a member of the pack, uh, actually really good. It's a great opportunity to talk to people and to show empathy, get people's stories on top of have mine, and really, it's a good feeling. It's freeing in a sense. It's a good feeling. It just is really a good feeling. It's hard to articulate actually how good it feels to be able to communicate and get things out that most guys just don't have the opportunity to take. And here it is, take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was saying, men come to us at all different moments. Some have been through it and they're on the other side of life. Some men come to us and they're really struggling. So I believe that Chris is definitely on the other side now, but I'm gonna let him tell a story. So what led you to this point?
Well, let's man. Well, what actually really led me to this point was a situation that happened with my older kids just recently. Uh, some bad things happened with them, and I had a conversation with my third oldest daughter, and she was like, "Dad, I really need you to pick it up, otherwise we're going to not communicate anymore." And we went in depth about what she wanted from me and where her boundaries were and everything, and I was like, "Okay, you know what, it's time to be even more real with who I was and hold accountability." So I literally started looking on Facebook. I typed in literally men's accountability groups, and lo and behold, this one was the first one that popped up. So
Yeah.
it's
So l- let's dive into that. You said that, you know, your kids kind of checked you or your daughter. How were you living?
well, I was living actually really good. It's just I can I put it there was resentments for things, and it was things that my kids didn't realize were true. And when they came in, my youngest oldest daughter, I should say, we didn't really have that strong of a bond, due to a gentleman and a guy, I should say.
Mhm.
So we didn't really have a lot of communication, and we've communicated off and on through the years as she's gotten older, and every time we have this communication, this guy would somehow put a stop to it. He'd somehow, and I'd blow up. I'd get angry. I'd be verbally abusive. Shoot, dude, I'd get off the phone and I'd go knock a tree. I'd go punch a door or something like that. It was it
Yeah.
was it was really I was really angry. And well, through all that, I decided I would go back and I would look at my life, exactly the thing she was talking about, she brought to my attention, and I'd really start exploring those things and touch base. So I talked with a counselor, and then I started joining this class group, and I've been through all this stuff for the last year, and well, be a year and almost a year and a half now, and it's been really, I guess, helpful, and it put me back on the path to want to continue to do what I was doing before. So it's where I am. Sorry if I'm kind of beating around this being vague, but the situation with
No.
my children is it's still in legal processes, so I have
Yeah.
to kind of watch what I say in those terms.
Absolutely.
So
So what made you want to take accountability? I know your daughter came to you, but let's talk about your past, yourself and her age. Like what led you through the path? You said resentment. I mean,
oh man, it started off, I've already talked to you about this before, but
yeah, yeah.
I went through trauma as a kid, some serious abuse. Ended up being a poster child for a foster system. Ended up even getting beat in that foster system.
Yeah.
Got picked up by my folks when I was 14 finally. Treated miserably, got turned on to drugs and alcohol through my parents. And then I just continued that lifestyle. You know, I had so many resentments back just from the things that happened to me as a kid that I continued to carry those resentments with me every day of my life. And it turned into me taking those resentments out on my friends, out on lovers, out on any and everybody at any opportunity I could. I I would hammer people just to feel better about myself. And you know that statement that you might hear, hurting people hurt people. That's
Hmm.
exactly where I was at. I hurt everybody for things that weren't their fault, and I never took accountability for the single fact that those issues were mine to deal with, and I chose not to deal with it. And then I got to this point in my life where I was ashamed of myself. So then I'd lash out on everybody else just for being ashamed of my own mistakes in my past, never truly holding myself accountable, always blaming them on somebody else. And I realized in this last year and a half that one, I didn't have to prove myself or get acceptance from people in my childhood who weren't never there for me. You know, they didn't show me the love and compassion that they should have. They didn't teach me, they didn't educate me. They, you know, if I needed help with homework, it was, we'll figure it out, I'm going to the bar. You know, I grew up a latchkey kid like that. They went to work, they got home, they changed, they went to the bar. That was life. And eh,
I I respect that. And I appreciate your vulnerability because a lot of men out there stuff it down. And I as well, have been through traumas, and I commend you for, speaking about that. And a lot of men, even with their children, I know another member that I'm talking to trying to help him out of abusive situation. A lot of men don't really consciously think that that's happening. Does that make sense? So what happened to you as a child is extremely powerful because it's also happening to a member's son.
right. And well, growing up with the abuse that I did taught me behaviors that weren't appropriate, and it made me numb to those
Mhm.
occasions when I'd see him in public. Like I it made me numb to even towards my own kids. I neglected my own children, my older children. I did all these things, and it puts us in a position as people who were abused as adults in some aspect to go numb to that situation. Like we can see it's there, but subconsciously or even consciously we're like, oh, it's okay, oh, it's okay, until it gets to a point where we can't handle it. And all of a sudden you have two choices. You either blow up or you try to figure out how to get out. It's just a matter of time for every instance or every occasion of abuse when that happens, that you figure, okay, what's going on? And then something happens, and that becomes the moment of clarity. And once that moment of clarity hits and you're like, wow, okay, this happened, then you start to put the puzzles together. You start to figure out ways to repair. You start to figure out ways to get out of that situation. And then once you get out of that situation, the repair becomes a necessity, because you can't just leave it. You can't just bury it down there. It has to be addressed, because if you don't address it, you're not going to actually break that cycle. You're just going to patch the wound. It's like duct taping a hole on a sinking boat. It's not going to do you any good.
I completely agree with that. And what do you think personally kept you in that almost black hole of just habits and repeating and living in that cycle of pretty much slowly killing yourself? Let's talk about going through that and what actually happened that was your come to Jesus moment.
Well, let's see, there's been a couple of come to Jesus moments where I stepped back on the path that I was on. So,
Yeah.
um, the first time I had a come to Jesus moment, I went to jail. I
Hmm.
spent 187 days in jail, and I went out and I went and did all the classes they told me to do, and I did them. but I still thought in the back of my mind, yeah, whatever, this isn't going to help me. I didn't take it
Mhm.
seriously. And I ended up going back to jail. And I went through the same classes again. Um,
Mhm.
Only this time some things stuck. And so for the longest time, I, I, I wasn't that angry drug addict. I was sober. I was starting to really deal with my emotions. I was going to counseling. I was really in depth in it. I mean, I took 7 years of it. And then all of a sudden, I I picked up, I started smoking pot again. And then it was pre surgery. And all of a sudden, I was on, well, my drug of choice was Percocets and codeine. So I
Mhm.
know I was on Percocet. And I think at the time I had a cold. So I was a really bad one, sore throat. And also they gave me that codeine cough syrup or whatever it was.
Mhm.
And I took that and I, I went to sleep. I don't really remember what totally happened, but I ended up getting in a verbal altercation and I was physically attacked. And in the process of that physical attack, I chucked somebody clean off of me and hurt him. And so I went to jail. I spent 30 days, got out, cleaned my life up completely. Um, then sentence came, I got sentenced to 30 days. And I guess as an added bonus to really figure myself out, I was put in isolation for 28 out of those 30 days.
Mhm.
And in isolation, I read this. Well, I read a ton of books, but I read one book, and I don't even remember the name of it. But in that book, it talked about really searching yourself. It was a book about a criminal. I just don't remember which one. Um,
Mhm.
but it said something about really finding yourself through your struggles, taking the opportunity wherever you are in that moment to search who you are. And so this time I really started searching. And after all of that stuff was done, I was like, you know what? I really want to get into this. So I got a counselor. I started attending my classes, started really powering through my classes, and my counselor ended up being the same counselor who taught my classes. So we're together.
Mhm.
I still talk to her on my phone. I was talking to her earlier today about us doing this. And
Yeah.
I just came to this focus that I needed to go back to where my education was. I needed to start pursuing that again. I needed to figure out what small goals I had and what large goals I had, and I needed to start working. And it was through all that time in that 20, I want to say 28 days in that room for what, 27 and a half hours a day.
Yeah.
I I figured it was time, and I came to the conclusion, okay, I'm going to better myself. I'm going to go back to my education and start remembering and using the tools that I had. I was going to take the tools that I learned from my class. I was going to overcome and talk about my issues with my counselor and try and figure out a way to do it with other people. What happened with my kids happened, and then I got a phone call and I talked with my daughter about it, and we had our conversation, and it all just really combined into one. Like, I have got to better who I am. Like, this is my goal. I'm not going to let my children suffer. I'm not going to let the people around me suffer. I'm going to have those tools. And now that I've been sober for a really long time now, I can go back and I look at my life now through all of my addictions and the violence. And I can tell you right now that the two number one contributors to those behaviors and that mentality was never dealing with my issues from the past and drugs and alcohol.
Mhm.
And I mixed those two together on top of the past issues, and it was a ticking time bomb. It didn't matter when it was or how it was. I'm the one who didn't do anything about it. I just hid my feelings behind drugs and alcohol. And
And I'm glad you said that actually, because that seems to be a common theme with men. And I actually talked about it on a podcast interview I did for our brotherhood. But a lot of men go to drugs and alcohol so easily, and we really don't realize the codependency. When I used to hear codependency, I would think like a relationship, and I'm
right.
so aloof I didn't really understand what codependency meant. So I love that you say that when we start to drink or smoke weed or whatever the drug of choice or food or porn or whatever they're struggling with, it feels good for a little bit until you make it a habit. And when you're going into this black hole, you're in such a pattern and it just doesn't feel the same and it slowly deteriorates you.
Yeah, that's very true. God, man, put me on the spot. You actually might make me cry. um,
No, it's fine, man. I've been there.
those those spots and all of that. I didn't know that I had a way out, and I you see it. I wear it with me every day. Um,
Absolutely.
I I didn't I didn't even have faith. I didn't have that with
Mhm.
me, and I know a lot of people might not believe, and that's your guys' choice. It's it's what really helped me through all of this time. There were times where I was homeless and struggling. I left a halfway house or a shelter pretty
Mhm.
far away from one place, and I walked in one day 18, I think it was 18 and a half miles or something like that. And I was just going to go live in the woods. I was tired of the drama. I didn't want to be around people who were drinking and partying and then going into the shelter. And I just felt gross. I was like, you know what? I'll just go live in the woods. I'll stay by the river. I'll buy a tent, do what I need to do. I'll live by the woods, shower, wash in the river, take care of myself, feed myself that way, whatever. And it was, gosh, that was last summer during the big heat wave, if you might remember it,
Mhm.
actually. Ended up with blisters on the bottom of my feet, man. They were like that big, just huge blisters. And I get a phone
Yeah.
call on my phone from a lady who I was going to counseling to see all the time. And she's like, hey, I found you a place. And that was literally at the moment I was literally walking on the side of my feet at that point. My socks were bloody. I was totally out of it. And she's like, I found you a place. And the whole time before that, I was sitting there praying to God, just let me get to a place where I can camp. Let me get to a place where I camp. Just something, please. And I was tired and I was drained. And gosh, in fact, on my walk there, I
Mhm.
remember using my cell phone. I have this little portable battery pack that's like a solar power battery pack. And
Yeah.
at that time, I'm still waiting for the next season of The Chosen to come out. But I actually commented on the Chosen website about what was going on right after I got that call on Facebook, and I posted a picture of my feet with my Bible
Mhm.
right there and a statement that I have a bed, and that it was all because of that. And that's just another portion or another key to me overcoming all of that. And it's I don't there's so many factors. Like my life was huge. It was painful, it was sorrow filled, it was a lot of remorse, shame, staring at that shadow in front of me every day, the pills, the drugs, the pot, the which is a drug, the booze, big time the booze, not taking care
Mhm.
of my physical conditions. My physical conditions are alone. I I was trying to mask stuff that I actually needed medication, real medication for, with drugs and
Yeah.
booze. And, you know, it all drove me to where I am sitting right now. And if it wasn't for taking accountability, for seeing the things that I needed to do, seeking help when I needed to seek it, I wouldn't be here. I failed once really badly. And that was well before my recent issues. Well, not exactly so recent now.
Yeah.
It was a decade ago, 14 years ago, almost to the day, actually, when my older children left the state I lived in at the time and they moved to where they moved. I lost it. I totally broke down. That is probably the biggest breakdown of my life. And I figured, you know what? I'm just going to end it. So I took a whole bunch of pills. I laid down up in this field, up in the mountains by where my folks live, and I just laid there. No one saw me. No one knew where I was for a day and a half. I woke up. I could hardly walk. I dragged myself to a friend's house. They got a hold of my parents. I went to the hospital. They pumped my stomach. They gave me all sorts of meds. My stepmom walked in and she literally slapped me. I mean, right there in front of doctors and nurses told me never to do that again. And that's another thing that I've been holding on to. I haven't
Mhm.
tried to end my life since way back then. And that
Yeah.
that was another big factor. You know, we can sit here and talk and talk and talk. I've had a lot of reasons to change my life for the better and steer me towards helping other people because that's what I went to college for in the beginning anyway. And I
Yeah.
turned on that path for drugs, alcohol, and sorrow. It's-
And I love that you say that. So all your traumas that happen, and it's, it's almost a bittersweet thing. And I feel the same way. Is I wouldn't be where I am without all of the small things that I chose to place in my life, or that broke my heart slowly down, and my choices and my codependencies. And I love that you say accountability, because that's a huge thing we stand for. Is, we can't blame things on external situations or people. Why do you think it was your final tipping when your child came to you?
I could hear the pain in her voice, even though she was pretending to be strong. And I mean, she's a very strong young woman. She's articulate and intelligent and brave, and for her to come and talk to me in the way that she did, it made me realize that I really truly haven't been as brave as I thought I was, and that I'm hearing that come out of my 16-year-old's mouth, and with such conviction, with such courage and such dedication to herself. And
Mhm.
I was proud. I was proud and so foolish before to never see that I was failing her in ways that I didn't know. You know, I gave up when I was cut ties of. You know, I kept trying to hold on to that rope, but every time I grab a piece, it didn't. There was another force that had very much control and dominance of the situation that stopped me at every turn. Plus, he had the resources that I didn't. And at one point, I said, you know, pardon my language, I said, "Fuck it,"
Yeah.
and I I I hit the drugs harder than I ever did before, chewing Vicodin. I did meth, gosh, a few different times,
Mhm.
cocaine, mushrooms, LSD, gosh, you name it. If I could put it in my system to forget, I did. And I sit back and I look and I'm like, all these things wouldn't have happened if I just wouldn't have given up. I could have done everything in my power. Gosh, even right now with current situations that are going on, I go, gosh, if I would have done better back then, they'd have never been in the position that they're already now. They'd never be dealing with the issues that they're suffering right now at this moment.
Let me ask you this. To For her to communicate that as a grown woman, being 16 years old, and you said that it really hurt you, do you feel you were almost living on autopilot and not realizing that you were causing outside trauma, like your ego and trauma just took a hold of
Um,
you? Or what made that matter? Like, what grounded you?
well, I was definitely a narcissist. Don't get me wrong. I
Mhm.
I was a complete narcissist. I couldn't be wrong about anything. And I guess hearing the pain and all of that, you know, it definitely was the ego. A lot of it was ego, selfishness. What grounded me was the fact that I instantly felt more shame than I've ever felt in my entire life. Having your daughter, you know, a straight A student, super good sports athlete, very, very well grounded thanks to her mom. You know, I, to be completely honest, it's everything about her that I wanted to ever be as an adult, really, you know. But I pissed it all away for my own self-loathing, self-pity, arrogance, all of it. And when I had to grasp at that and see that my daughter was something that I had ever always wanted to be, it was eye-opening. And that's been my driven goal every day now, is that I I need to be a father to my daughter. I don't need my daughter to be a parent to me. And I need to be supportive. I need to be messaging her every day that I possibly can. She's super busy though. Kid, I'm telling you. Um, it's just that. And then of course, there's more to it to help put me in this position. I've got
Hmm.
Genghis over there in the next room right now, my autistic soon to be stepson, and seeing all of his struggles and how he wasn't able to help him, and everything that I've learned that I also try using with him, and him becoming this amazing young man that he's turned out to be, dealing with his ODD, his autism, ADHD, and all these things.
Yeah.
It's it's just it's all been so humbling to see that, what, I can do good if I actually apply myself, and I don't hide behind drugs, booze, anger, aggression. I use empathy, I use compassion, show my love to people instead of hiding it behind no smile. I used to
Hmm.
never
Yeah.
smile.
Hmm.
I didn't dance in public. I didn't laugh. I didn't enjoy life. And every bit of trauma and everything I went through, having my daughter say that, having that little man who's next door right now show me that he can do real good, and him tell me that he wants to be just like me, is just every bit of it. That there's so many reasons why I found myself grounded. I can't really say them all, dude.
And I totally agree. It's a culmination of, just all these events. And I love that you're saying, now I'm starting to think about legacy, and, my perception was challenged, and it really got me thinking differently. So let's touch on that.
Well, with Elaine, that's my counselor, there was a lot of things
Hmm.
that I really hadn't touched base on. There were a lot of things that I really didn't talk about. Counseling, and hearing everything from all the guys, and finally coming out and telling my story, breaking down and crying, having to walk out and go take a minute in the bathroom, incidences like that inside class. And then you've got counseling and sitting down with her in counseling and talking to everything before that. And probably for the first portion of it, I hated myself. My mind would constantly go back to those suicidal ideations, those thoughts of,
Hmm.
gosh, everything's hopeless. I'm never going to amount to anything. I'm never going to be any good to anybody. I'm always going to be a failure. I'm just a total screw up. There's no hope for me. I was so self defeating. I put all these boundaries in my path. And,
Hmm.
as I slowly started going through all these things, and seeing everything. And the first inclination that I was doing something right was Kai, actually Genghis. It has to be the moment where he came up to me and he asked me if I was proud of myself. And I didn't understand what he meant. And I said, "Well, I'm not proud of myself. I've done a lot of horrible things, buddy." And he goes, "Are you proud of yourself now, though?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Are you proud of yourself now? You've helped me do all these good things." And that, um, um, he, and I was like, "Well, no, buddy, I'm not proud of myself for that. I'm proud of you." And, and he actually got mad at me, that little dude. Um, and he goes, "Well, you should be proud of yourself, Chris. You're not a failure. You're a good person." And you know, I think that was a really big turning point in my life. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Um,
Have Have you ever heard that? Like, have
no,
you ever truly felt proud? Like, I get goosebumps just saying it.
no, not that was the big one. I never thought that I could actually help anybody. And I tried at first certain years back 20 years ago. I tried.
Mhm.
And then I turned to drugs and booze and all of that again, and I pissed away everything in my life. I ended up fracturing my C5. I ended up shattering my shoulder, getting my concussion syndrome and my seizures and all of that. And that was it. I just gave up.
Yeah.
And after meeting Little Man and getting to that point, though, I think that was honestly the really, really first time I've actually ever at that moment briefly felt proud of myself. But that's also when I knew that I either had two goals. I wanted to go back to what I wanted to do in college, which was help other men, or I wanted to go
Mhm.
back to college and help children with disabilities like him. And it's it's still a toss up, to be
Yeah.
honest. I really want to work with children who've got disabilities and have been abused and neglected because that's my life, that's my childhood. Um,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I want to work with adults and men who have suffered the same issues that I have and have found themselves in places where they don't necessarily want to be or don't know how to escape from. So I'm proud of myself for where I started. I'm proud of myself for now overcoming those issues. I'm proud of myself for having Kai in my life. Little Man has taught me a lot
Mhm.
more than I believe I've taught him.
Yeah.
And man, now you got me all messed up here. Um,
No,
I'm
you I
blaming
mean, you
that
should
on
be
you.
proud. You're
Um,
good, you're good. I mean, this is the thing. I think a lot of men hold this in. We spend all this time just assuming life is one way and, climbing the ladder and just making beliefs. And then we're on top of the ladder just to realize that it's the wrong ladder. We've been climbing the wrong thing. Like, life isn't what it seems. There are different possibilities. I've wasted all this time, but to be on that other side and know that your story means something, that you can impact, and that all this or everything that you went through, like, you're exactly where you need to be.
Man, I walked that ladder that I was on for a really long time, dude. And
Mhm.
I got to that ladder, and as I slowly went up the steps of that ladder of life that I was living,
Mhm.
it started out being just a happy-go-lucky kid. And then it went from a happy-go-lucky kid to a terminally sad, being disrespectful, not knowing why, always getting punished. Of course, now I know why. To a young adult who didn't care about anything, was home bouncing around between us, to being in my 20s and having just horribly toxic
Mhm.
relationships that genuinely were my fault. It wasn't them, it was
Yeah.
me. I was a drug addict. I was an alcoholic. I was verbally abusive, sometimes physically abusive. I hurt so many people in the wake of my self-destruction. I hit that step before now, where I get
Mhm.
the realization of everything I need to do, and I need to go back and really start applying myself to my teachings, to the things I bring to other people. I need to start holding myself accountable and standing up. And or right after that spot, I fell, because that's what I
Mhm.
wanted to do. I wanted to help everybody. I wanted to do good for everybody. I fell. And then through my counseling, I went over to a smaller ladder that's right next to me that I never even saw was there. I needed
Mhm.
to bring up my stuff. I stepped off that big ladder. I took the first step on that little one. Started doing everything I was supposed to, living clean and sober again. I took that next step. I was looking for a healthy relationship, and a healthy relationship came into my
Mhm.
life where there's ribbon, there's joking, there's pranks, lots of pranks, lots and
Yeah.
lots of pranks. To meeting the kids that are in my life now and continuing to, enjoy things, helping a 17-year-old have his GPA up to almost a 3.85 now, I think it is, working
Nice.
his way into the United States Navy. I'm very proud of him. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
to, you know, and then you have Kai on top of it who's just excelling. The kid is excelling. Talking to my daughter is the step I'm on now. Talking to my daughter and figuring out, okay, Chris, it's time for you to follow your dreams, continue to be sober, continue to be helpful, follow on the path that you're on. And that's what my daughter told me. Dad, I just want you to follow the path that you're on. Follow your dreams, do right. And here I am following my dreams. I'm holding myself accountable. I'm finishing up everything that I need to be doing. I'm getting a house and moving down south. I've got
Yeah.
great. I'm going to be helping my soon to be in-laws with the farm and dealing with all that struggles in the house. There's no arguments. There's no verbal verbal abuse. There's no degrading. There's empathy. There's trust. There's communication. There's complete openness. It's a life that I never had before. I'm talking to my daughter. I'm communicating with her through her struggles. The older ones are very, very busy. I mean, both having my grandchildren. So we talk intermittently right now, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's really healthy to be able to sit back right now and just go, wow, dude, I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing this. I pulled myself up. I'm helping my kids. I'm I'm doing good for other people. And then I had found the group because I was looking for that place, the place where I could just,
Yeah.
this is what I was. Here I am now, and I'm proud of
Mm-hmm.
myself. I still got a lot of work on. I've got overcoming my
Absolutely.
health issues and things like that. Um, a little scary, that one, but um, I don't, dude. I just life is so much better when you actually grab that freaking rope and you start dragging yourself out of the mud. It gets painful. It hurts. It's stressful. It's tedious. And the moment you can come out and pull yourself out of there, uh, there was a gentleman on our site today on the Facebook
Mm-hmm.
page. I had wrote two questions like I did yesterday, and I'll probably continue
Yeah.
to do my two-question deal. And he came out and he was like, "These are my things." That's not many men come out and they talk.
Exactly.
It was totally brave. That was brave. This is what's going on. This is what he would do different, and that was brave. And that's where I got to that point where I needed to be brave, and that's what my daughter taught me by setting her boundaries. That's it. All goes back to her. Set that boundary, and my boundary with myself was I needed to be brave. I needed to not be afraid to be who I am. I needed to not be afraid to put down past traumas and move on past them, and that's what I did.
Exactly. And there's so many men listening right now who are going to be like, I thought it was just me. I thought I was the only one who had a stepmother that wouldn't let me do anything or just constantly put me down. So I do think it's so important for men to take that leap of faith, be brave, be vulnerable, because as I told you the other day, I wish I would have had that mentor and supportive people on the right path, people who are, whether it's growing a business or taking care of their childhood trauma, our brotherhood, it's come and take what you currently work on, but there is a thing, wheel of life, it's 8 quadrants: contributation, family, and your personal development. If it's all not balance, which balance is a verb, it's
Right.
an action you're constantly doing. It's not, I need to figure out how to be more balanced. Like, it's an active thing. And if these places are all over the place, I mean, think of it like a wheel on a car. How far are you going to get before it does more damage than good? For men to actually sit down, audit their life as you ask those 2 questions that you have been, and to really come forward and get that opportunity to have a mentor, have the strength to come and join us. Like, it takes a lot of courage. But as you were saying, you're smiling, you're dancing. Life doesn't have to be the way that we were living in that black hole of just brain fog and just an excuse to get drunk or
Right.
smoke weed or cocaine or porn or whatever. You don't have to feel helpless. It
Right.
takes that one event, you know, as you said as well. You've been through tons of events, but it's almost like what's going to be a higher priority. We all have that priority, and as we're talking, if I heard like a yelp or something right now, or a blood curdling, from my corgi, I'd be like, yo, Chris, I gotta go.
Right.
So, and that's what I'm trying to explain. Certain things happen in your life, and they're gonna give you an option for that path, but you shouldn't wait until you hear that, blood curdling scream. It's so important for men to ask themselves these questions that you ask and really try to get things from a different perspective, or just admit you know nothing. You'll be ahead of the 99%.
Right.
It's okay to tell your story. Life keeps giving you these opportunities, and we're your lifeboat. Are you going to jump in, or are you just going to be like Jack and, freeze? And a lot of these men, they freeze
It's a
though
good
until
analogy. Man,
yeah.
it's been a blessing to pull myself out of that deer in the headlights phase in my life, and where I just held on to all of that baggage, and I held on
Mhm.
to I held on to my own personal issues, and then on top of that, I hid the fact that I was an angry, abusive, narcissistic, complete jackass of a person, and
Yeah.
and now I'm learning so much, I'm learning that I can take care of myself. I'm learning that health does matter. I'm getting older in life. I'm not in my 20s or 30s anymore. I'm getting
Mhm.
close to 50 now. And breaking my C5, fracturing my shoulder like I did, well, fracturing my C5, breaking my shoulder, all of it,
Mhm.
you know, it all comes back. It all comes back. No matter how old you are, your mistakes will come back to get you, whether it's physically or
Absolutely.
mentally. If you don't deal with them, hold yourself accountable, and grow past them, learn to better yourself, follow your dreams and goals and aspirations, stay dedicated to that motivation, don't walk away from it. The biggest key that I've found in all of this growth, besides just myself, is a brotherhood. It is a group of
Mhm.
individuals who you can call up, that you can speak with, that you communicate with. I'm gonna be not having mine here soon. I'm moving.
Yeah.
And I searched out a brotherhood and I found one. And
Yeah.
this talking with you, man, I don't think you haven't missed a day, honestly. This has literally
Um,
been every day in the morning. I have a message, a hi, how you doing, asking me how my day's going,
yeah.
and that's healthy. And the fact that we can be honest with each other and tell our stories to each other, it's cathartic. It's it is so freeing. And but I got to be honest, dude, I thank you. I appreciate you a lot for this. It's been healthy, and it's something that I keep trying to get all my other buddies into. Like, come on, guys, let's do
Yeah.
this. But
And it's that leap of faith, and one of my favorite movies is Butterfly Effect, and I
oh
almost want to
wow,
touch on like how I was also like you, living like that, and then once you finally choose that light path, when the universe or whatever, like you said, whatever you believe in, Buddha, is like, hey, we're gonna try, see if you're conscious enough this time to see that I'm giving you this light path. And once you finally make that decision, it just, your whole demeanor changes. And when you look back, you don't necessarily regret, but you almost kind of question yourself, like, how did I live that long in a coma?
yeah,
And I appreciate you for thinking me, and like, I'm no better than you. This is the reason we have this, is more men need that help, and everyone has value in their story and what they've been through, and we need to start utilizing that.
right. It's those tools that sit in front of you that are present every day. If you don't seek to take advantage of those, you're
Hmm.
you're 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 putting yourself at a disadvantage. You know, we all have
Absolutely.
tools, we all have those things, and it's up to us to pick them up to build the beautiful house we have or that we
Mhm.
want or dream for. And if you're not striving every day to grab your tools and use them all, you're failing yourself and you have nobody else to blame but yourself. So,
Mhm. I love you say that actually because I heard an analogy today. It was kind of like that. Life can't happen without a team. As much like you can't play basketball without a team, right? Throw them a pass, and if they're not receiving it, sooner or later you're going to quit passing.
right,
It's very important that men just try and take that leap and just step up. The worst thing that can happen, like your life remains the same if you join us and you decide it's not for the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to be stuck in the same boat that they were. And a lot of men just need you don't need 100 self-help books. You just need damn
right.
discipline
And,
and
you
action.
know, you say that sometimes you'll be stuck in that path. Well, sometimes that path can
Mhm.
put you in a worse position than you are. I mean, take me for
Yeah.
example. I stayed in that path. That path continued to crumble underneath me, and eventually it
Mhm.
landed me behind bars.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you don't just stay where you are. Sometimes, more
Mhm.
often than not, you fall. So, every time you make a choice, you need to take a minute to stop and think about what that choice is, because sometimes that choice can end up with you locked up, and
Mhm.
that's not a place anybody really wants to be, man. Jail sucks. It's no fun.
Yeah. Jail sucks. Really takes that like shake in you moment and you really have to sincerely almost lose something or be rock bottom or to see our actions flowing into other people's life and for them to come to you and be like, hey, I got a higher standard and you're better than this. And to
Right,
have that good communication, like men need that. And maybe it will take that just one call out like your daughter did or that question to really challenge their perception.
right.
You know what I mean?
That yeah, I do know what you mean. You know, it wasn't just that one call out that got to me. The first time I ever realized I was a narcissist was when a judge told me that. It's like, "Dude, you're a
Yeah.
narcissist. Take some time." And there I went.
Yeah.
You know, there was no get out of jail free card. I left the room in handcuffs,
Complaining the whole way too, I'm sure, with your
amongst
narcissistic
other
comments, like,
things.
yeah,
Amongst other
mhm,
things. You know, it's just I, I learned. I learned a lot. And
mhm,
now I'm taking the opportunity to help others not follow my path, because this
yeah,
is an endless journey life, man, and all the way up until the moment where it stops. That journey is nothing but education, nothing but learning, nothing but making mistakes, overcoming your mistakes. It's just the mistakes that you choose to make are where you lie. We have we know right and wrong. We we
mhm,
we know that we should dedicate ourselves to things. We know that we should treat people with respect. We know we should use empathy. We know that compassion is a way to live life and to be
mhm,
treating everybody in this world, and including ourselves, because let's be honest, if it's not right to pick on somebody else, why are you picking on yourself? And I spent a lot of time living that way, and it's
we
just
are always our own worst enemy. Most people don't realize,
right.
and even when you act up, you're usually kicking yourself in the tail because you're just so embarrassed that it and even happens when you get on the other side, you're like, I can't even believe I responded to that, you're
Right.
just like, what? Things aren't always going to get your way, but that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to bring awareness and consciousness and just are on a path and learning. But as I said the other day, scarcity, win or lose, but abundance, man, win or learn.
Right.
It's all the perception.
Right. And that I lived in that. I lived that scarcity for a really long time.
Yeah.
And
You're either running from pain or going towards pleasure. And I ran from pain for like over 25 years. I know that.
well, I know how that goes. You know,
Yeah.
it's a blessing. Now I look at all the
Hmm.
mistakes that I made and all the challenges that I went through, and my daughter's statements and Genghis over there. I think
Yeah.
he's playing on that cell phone and having a judge call me a narcissist and then locking me up and giving me the option to go back and change myself, and me sitting where I
Mm-hmm.
am today with a counselor's help, with loving support. Man, I even talk to the mother of my children. We communicate like we're
Yeah.
friends. And for the
Yeah.
longest time we weren't. And
Yeah.
it's my life has changed so much because I've decided to live a life of accountability, truth, all the foundations that you need to have positive, healthy relationships and grow financially, emotionally, all of it. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can go from literally being looking to a place to sleep in the woods next to a river to
Yeah.
moving down south and getting a house, life is a lot different when you decide to make positive changes.
Man, I mean, your story is so deep, and we haven't even scratched the surface,
No
but it's
shit, thanks.
incredible. And I'm so excited for you being an asset with the Brotherhood, and I'm excited for men to learn from you and, for you to step up as a trainer and lead. For all the men listening, if you resonate with the story or Chris, come join us or, come check out our Facebook. It's facebook.com/group/alpha redefinition. You can find us on there and come chat with us. But as I said, I'm really excited to see where you go with us, Chris. And I'm sure this will definitely not be the last podcast that we have you on. And I would love to have you co host with certain topics. Your story is absolutely amazing. And before we do go, like I said, I'm going to surprise you with a question. All right.
Okay.
You ready for it? We're going in blind. So, with your legacy, what is one thing that you want to be remembered for the impact that you leave in the world?
That I overcame with the goal and intent to help others, and I at least helped one person not take the path that I did. I
It's amazing.
I don't I don't want riches. I don't want fame. I don't want to be known for I just anything. I just want to be known for loving people now and for taking care of people who need to be helped. I don't want anything out of life other than that, to be honest with you.
I mean, that sounds like a wealthy life, to be honest. And the fact that just knowing the fulfillment really does come from serving people. I mean, that was perfectly said. Absolutely. I thank you for your time, Chris. And I am so excited to honestly have you on more podcast. And
I'm
yeah,
looking forward to it. I truly am. And like I said, dude, I really appreciate you and what you're doing for fellas, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So thank you.
hey, hey, not a problem, man.